The more strongly you identify with something, the harder it is for you to let it go. That's why a lot of spiritual traditions talk about non-attachment and things like that. Because the more we identify with certain things, the more we create a karmic link to them, if you want to call it that. But they become embedded as part of who we are, right? So the more we identify with a certain thing, and if they're good things, we're happy about that. Like, we can identify with being a kind person. Then that's great, right? We can identify with being successful, and that's great. We can identify with being accomplished spiritually, and that's great, right? But most people don't recognize, or people who are in the middle of their stuff might not recognize that they're actually identifying with the negative aspects that they hold about themselves as well. And that could be traumas. A lot of people identify with their traumas, right? And so they're busy doing a lot of work to try and get rid of those things, but they identify with that. It's a part of their identity, and as long as it's a part of their identity, they're never going to be able to release it or move past it, right? At the end of the day, the things that happen to us are just experiences, and we pick and choose the ones that we hold on to. And those ones that we hold on to tend to be the ones that we use to create our identity, And in the case of traumatic experiences, a lot of people identify with their trauma. And at the root of that is an identification with being a victim, of being victimized by this creation around us. So as long as you identify with those things, those negative parts of yourself that you may be trying to get rid of, you may be trying to release, you may be trying to move beyond them, but as long as you identify with them, as long as you make them a core part of your identity, then it's going to be impossible for you to move beyond them. Because moving beyond them would mean letting go of who you believe you are, which is ultimately the transformational process. But until you're willing to release those things, truly release them from your identity, then it's going to be almost impossible for you to move past them, no matter how much work you do, no matter how much spiritual growth you do, no matter how much therapy you go to, no matter how much drinking you do. Like, lots of people have different ways to try to, cope with it. But at the end of the day, it's all about what we identify with, what we pick and choose out of the experiences of our lives to form our identity. So if you could do something today, if you're looking to try and move past something in your life, something you feel that's negative, something you feel, that doesn't truly represent who you are, but it's something you're still struggling with, and it comes up over and over and over and over and over again, it's worth looking and seeing, asking yourself, do I identify with that, right? Do I identify with that experience that I had in my life? Is it a core part of my identity? And then go from there. I've encountered people who have had terrible trauma when they're kids, and they've created protection mechanisms, right? Which is natural. We do that. It's natural. It's what we do. And they could be psychological, they could be physical, it doesn't matter. They could be any of those protective mechanisms. But they identify with the protective mechanisms. They say, you know what, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be alive today. And they identify with that, even though they recognize that that protective mechanism is causing them harm now. In their adult life, they still find it hard to release that protective mechanism because they've identified so strongly with it. So when you recognize those things in your life, stop letting yourself off the hook and actually look at how those things are impacting you, not just you, but the people around you in a negative way, and look at ways that you can actually start to let go of those things. And it's a long road. It can be a long road sometimes, but again, it doesn't mean it's all about releasing the identification with those things. If you can look at those things and go, that's not actually me. I know that's not actually me in my spirit. That was just an experience I had. That was just a coping mechanism that I created. in order to deal with that experience at some point in time. And that experience is no longer happening to me. And so I don't need to continue with that. Even just thinking that to yourself, it doesn't mean it's going to instantly go away. There's no silver bullets for this stuff. But that's at least a start.